Hi, everyone. Welcome to my live stream. I am getting ready to set up some of these 7 round mocks. And basically, the reason why I'm doing these, and a little pull back the curtain, I'm going on a lot of really awesome shows. I've linked them in a tweet. I'm going on, on in Buffalo, doing some Buffalo hits, going on in New York with Jake Asman, and then we're going on with Matthew Collar and the Purple Insider podcast. So I'm really excited to kind of like pull back the curtain on how I like to prep for these. And I'm going to do some 7 round mocks. So it's going to be pretty fun, pretty exciting, and let's see how this goes. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen right now, and we'll get started. Let's go ahead and pull up ESPN's NFL Draft Simulator. So basically, I'm just trying to get a sense of like who's going to fall to these teams, what they're going to look like. Um, the idea of like the consensus of what's going on. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how these in particular play out because I think these teams are all pretty interesting in the fact that they all kind of have their quarterback situations figured out. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills do, um, but they don't necessarily like know in the case of the Jets and the Vikings, like where they're going next. And so it's going to be interesting, particularly in the middle rounds, to see if any of these interesting quarterbacks. I'm also going to be doing this alongside our draft guide, which I'll pull up right now. Just excellent stuff going on in this draft guide. You can see all the excellent artwork. I'm going to give a huge shout out to our designers, our engineers, a lot of hard work put into this. And we'll be, consulting this for the majority of this live stream, and just stick along. I think this is going to be a fun one, and we'll get it cut up and hopefully get some good clips out of it too. So we have Asa, who just joined our team. Shout out to Asa. The Bills are the Is This It of NFC East teams. Is This It is a great album. Julian Casablancas. Maybe Josh Allen's like the Julian Casablancas because it feels like Julian Casablancas was never on top, but Josh Allen, hadn't got on top either. Perhaps he'll knock it out of the ballpark here shortly. So let's get moving with some of this stuff. So let's start off with the Buffalo Bills. And so we'll queue them up in our mock draft simulator here. And let's keep it fast. So we're going to load up the draft. I'm not going to be making any trades here because I just think it's a little too difficult to do that. But we'll spend about a minute on each pick and get it started. So let's start the draft. Oh, a lot of stuff happening here. So let's first break down what's happened. So we have pretty much chalk here. Cam Ward 1, Abdul Carter 2, Travis Hunter 3. Shador Sanders, interestingly, going to the Raiders. If you want to go listen to the Draft FM podcast, my dad predicted that he'll go to the Raiders. Very interesting there. The Jets go with a tackle, Armand Membu. We'll talk about the Jets here shortly. And then, so some interesting other notes. Dolphins go with Ted McMillan. Very interesting in wake of, some rumors about Tyreek Hill. Jahdae Barron to the Falcons, interestingly, don't go edge, even though Shamar Stewart's available. Mykel Williams is available. But let's dig in to the Bills. So let's go ahead and make the pick. So I'm thinking about the Bills right here. And the Bills had a massive problem on defense last year. Like that was the majority of their problem. So I'm thinking that they probably want to go defense, and they're in a good spot. You can see Mike Green is available. Walter Nolan is available. Thomas is available. Like the people that are interesting me here are the two top guys, the edge, Mike Green, and Walter Nolan. Asa chiming in, interior pass rush would be huge here. I tend to agree. Let's give a look at Walter Nolan because he feels like an interior pass rusher. Obviously, I believe they have Eddie Oliver. I should honestly pull up their depth charts too. I believe they have Eddie Oliver. Let's zoom out a little bit because I'm on my my camera screen. Interior defensive line. Let's take a glance at Walter Nolan. Young guy, big guy. I'm a little worried about this weight here. I think Walter Nolan is probably not playing anywhere near 300. If I had to take a guess, he'd have to be more around 380 when he's really playing. He does have the run stuffer badge. That seems really key for the Baltimore Ravens, and just a lot of blue chip stuff here. Blue pressure rate against quality teams, pressure rate in general, sack rate, all pretty high for a defensive tackle. It feels correct that at what is this pick 30? We can go on the consensus big board, which obviously this has both mock draft and consensus big board data in there. And Walter Nolan's right at 30. That feels right. Obviously, we could go with the falling Mike Green coming from 17. So let's consult the Athletics big board here. Nolan is at 22. Mike Green is at 14. So, like, I know there's a lot of concerns about Mike Green. And I just am going to go ahead and not necessarily reach here, but I'm just going to go ahead and go with Walter Nolan. It just feels right. I got my TikTok camera over here, so excuse for Twitter and YouTube as I address the TikTok community. TikTok community, how y'all doing? It just feels right to go with an interior defensive lineman here. And moreover, I think you're getting an explosive guy who we showed the pressure rate against quality teams. It's going to be an excellent pick for them. So the Bills going Walter Nolan here, I think it's really good. I think it's going to help them. It's going to help their defense, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they move forward. So Walter Nolan will be the pick at 30 for the Buffalo Bills. A little longer than a minute. Maybe we can tie that up. But let's draft that player and get to pick 56. So other items of note. Kevin Winston Jr., a guy who really pops in some of our metrics. It seems pretty down the middle here. We're seeing mostly guys that we expect to go in this area. Mike Green ends up going 32 to the Eagles, which, that's of interest, right? It's certainly something that the Eagles now have Mike Green. It feels like it makes sense for them. They go ahead and grab the following consensus big board guy. Let's go ahead and make the pick at 56. A lot of interesting names here. Jaden Higgins is standing out to me. Trey Harris is standing out to me. To a certain degree, Jonas Savaniah is standing out to me. Jalen Noel is standing out to me. Let's go ahead and take a glance at some of these wide receivers. I think that makes sense. They just don't have a lot there. Like, I think that was a struggle of theirs too, but Josh Allen's just so good, it doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and go to the NFL draft guide on sumersports.com, which you can find right now, and take a glance at what is really going on with some of these wide receivers, in particular, Trey Harris, Noel, and Higgins. So let's start out with Trey Harris. I think there's a real question, and Lindsey Rhodes brought this up on Twitter a second ago about, like, how good are these offensive players given that Lane Kiffin has designed such an excellent offense for him. Sean Syed has been watching a lot of film, and he agrees. It's just beautiful. So we're looking at the percent of routes ran pressed. He wasn't really pressed a ton. He does have a kind of scary drop rate. He does have the gloves badge, which basically means he's immensely productive, and he's also running good routes, which is also very interesting. Shows up in the yards per route run, and it feels like basically he's going to be a guy who could probably be a wide receiver too, maybe at the top, really running a lot of post and a lot of curls, getting a lot of action all across the field. A little questionable. I'm not stunned by this guy. So let's look at Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins ate up a lot of team target share, a pretty good yards per route run. A lot of his yards are in the air, about 50%. Yards after catch percentage of total receiving yards, not a ton. So he's going to be a guy who's going to go up and get it. That matches what I saw at the Senior Bowl. Like, okay, we got Keon Coleman here, who did play a lot of slot. And you're going to have Khalil Shakir as well, who can kind of play all over the field. I kind of am liking this profile. I'm liking this profile from Jaden Higgins. Asa chiming in, sacrificial X receiver. So finally, let's check out Noel. Another Iowa State Cyclone. These guys really stood out to me at the Senior Bowl, and I'm an analyst, guys. Like, I'm not a scout by any range. I did play football, so I understand what it needs to look like. But when it comes down to it, I'm an analyst, and so I'm just trying to figure out kind of the best value here uh, for a player like this. He also it was basically a two-man game there, air yard share. He doesn't have any badges, so he wasn't excellent in our AI grades. Did run a lot of routes on file, more kind of an outside guy. Also has an excellent thing. I think I like I think I like the profile best of Jaden Higgins right here. I like that he has the gloves badge. I'm a little concerned about Trey Harris's stuff, and I think he's right around consensus, if I'm not mistaken. So let's look up Higgins. Yeah, pick 50 consensus. We're picking at 56. So to wrap this pick up, I'm really liking Jaden Higgins here. I think he has a profile that makes sense for a Josh Allen led team. I think he's going to fit in well alongside Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, some of those other guys. And I think this is just going to be an excellent piece. Again, I'm doing all these off the top of the dome just to prep for some of these excellent shows. This one in particular will be on the radio. You can go check out the station at in my Twitter profile. I just tweeted about it. Let's go Jaden Higgins. So we've added Walter Nolan. We've added Jaden Higgins. So round 2, pick 62. Not a ton of guys standing out. Jordan Birch does stand out to me a little bit. Again, we're talking Jonas Savanaya here. You know what I'm interested in? I'm interested in what their kind of needs are as looked at by kind of the consensus. So let's go ahead and pull that up here. Interesting ad. So we've addressed the interior defensive line. We've addressed the wide receiver position. Edge is out there as well. I think that's going to be very interesting. So let's take a look at Jordan Birch, and then we also have this tackle need, linebacker need. I think this could be a good spot to get a linebacker, perhaps. The guys who are really Xavier Watts also could be an interesting addition at safety. I just really didn't trust their defensive backfield last year to a certain degree. This is a tough pick. Here is a name that I love. Let's talk about Josiah Stewart for a little bit. Josiah Stewart is a guy who pops on literally everything. This would be a little bit of a reach for him at 62. Let's see where he is on the consensus big board. 74. Man, that's tough. I think I might like him a little better than Jordan Birch. I think I might be okay with reaching here. I think he's a name to look out for the Bills in particular. He's a little smaller. I know they've added some edge depth, and I love Russo. I think he's a ascending player. Let's see if we have some information on Jordan Birch. So Jordan Birch does have a badge. He's a Terminator. He's a great pursuit guy in the run stop. He has an excellent pressure rate. He played at a high level. This is actually interesting to me. 6'4", 279, a little bigger of a guy. I might actually go Birch here. I don't know if I want to go too far off of the consensus, especially since we might be able to grab, 2 edges, which would be interesting. But man, Josiah Stewart just has the pedigree. Everything that he does, I liked. I liked him at the Senior Bowl. So man, tough decision here. Very tough decision. Also like Darius Alexander to a certain degree. I think I might just go consensus. Go with the guy that I haven't, looked at a ton. But Jordan Birch, I kind of like his profile, and I like the fact that he's coming from a Dan Lanning defense. So let's go Jordan Birch here. So now we are at 4-1-4-109. So we have. I'm going to make some notes here. Bills, we have Nolan, we have Higgins, we have Birch, and now we're going into the fourth round here. Cam Scatabo, man, what a player! Man, I really like Quincy Riley. I really did. And we're starting to get a little deep here, so our draft guide may start to dry up a little bit, just because we have the top 150 guys that everyone really is focusing on. Let's see if we have Quincy Riley in here. It doesn't seem like we have Quincy Riley, and this is the part where the draft curve starts flattening out, in my opinion. Um, I think cornerback is a need for them. I like the idea of Quincy Riley being a guy who can kind of play multiple positions. I like the way that he looked at the combine. Excuse me, at the Shrine Bowl. I mean, at the Senior Bowl. Sorry about that. He's one of my standout players early on. 114. We're at 109. He's the one that really stands out to me right now. I'm not really seeing anyone else. So let's go Quincy Riley here. Quincy Riley. So pick 4, 132. Feels like we can probably get a linebacker here. Demetrius Knight is an interesting guy. I believe we do have him in the guide. I think he's one of those top guys. Yeah, dude. There's Demetrius. So he's a coverage guy, and I think that's going to be really key for the Bills scheme. They like to keep a kind of light linebacker box. That's what that shadow badge means. That means he's an excellent coverage guy. He was used a lot in coverage. He was a tackler. He wasn't in the box a ton. I think this is honestly a good fit for them. We have some other options here: running back, safety, cornerback. Not noticing anyone else that really stands out. I do like LaQuint Allen. I also think Kobe Bryant could be an option for them. But I really think Demetrius Knight is probably a good player here because of that, coverage ability that was highlighted in our draft guide. So we'll go at pick 132. We'll go with Demetrius Knight, and we're really going to use him as a coverage linebacker. And I think that's going to be really exciting for the Bills. So again, we're prepping here for some really excellent shows. Go check them out. We're prepping for we're prepping for WGR. Go check them out on Twitter at WGR550. We're prepping for Jake Asman, and we're also prepping for the Purple Insider podcast with my friend Matthew Collar, one of the best in the biz, as is all of these other folks. So let's go deep into round 5 for the Bills. So we're sitting here and we can kind of start thinking about the best player available, and we can kind of start thinking long term. Jackson Slater is a player that's really interesting to me out of Sacramento State. I talked about how I like LaQuint Allen. I also like Kobe Bryant. That feels like a good pick. Let's see which those are the 3 guys that are standing out to me. They've done a really good job of utilizing running backs in the past. I understand that they tried to extend James Cook. I don't know if there's been any new news about that, but this could be a place to take a shot on a tailback. I kind of like how that's sounding. The 2 people that are interesting me are Kobe Bryant and LaQuint Allen. So we don't have Kobe Bryant in our draft guide. He's kind of down the way. I'm pretty sure we have LaQuint Allen, probably by my request. So yeah, this is just a dude who was utilized a ton all over the place. We're talking, not the best EPA per rush. They really struggled, but I think that was more of an offensive line thing, frankly. And the idea that a lot of his rushing yards came after contact. He's a blue chip guy there. He really won a game after contact in UNLV, but this is really the difference. Like, he was an excellent player receiving the ball, and that showed up at the Senior Bowl too. And so, I love LaQuint Allen, but Kobe Bryant was a standout. Let's check what the consensus. So let's see. LeQuint, Allen 211, so pretty far down. Like we're kind of getting outside of our skis there. Kobe Bryant 128. That makes a little bit more sense. Let's see if these guys are top 100 guys. No, according to the Athletic. So if you're really looking for value at 169, it seems like Kobe Bryant of the guys that are standing out to me is probably a better play. We doubled down on quarterbacks. We actually get two of the cornerbacks who really stood out to me at the Shrine and Senior Bowl. So this is actually really exciting. I think they're going to fill a need there, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening for them. Oh, so we're back to back. Whenever it's back to back, I often think that this is going to be a trade back. We actually end up having 173 as well. So we get to draft everyone. So LaQuinn Allen is really high here. And I'm wondering why that is. It seems like ESPN's a lot higher on him than the consensus. Um, it's tough to cross reference here. I'm just going to go with LaQuinn Allen. That's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to do it. And we start to think about, other options after that. Dude, this is really interesting. So what I'm learning is that the Bills have a ton of resources at the bottom of the draft. And what that may mean is they may have the resources to do some pick swaps in order to move up. And that's kind of what they ended up doing last year, trading back. I think it was a good deal for the Chiefs when they traded back with the Bills. And allow the Chiefs to get Xavier Worthy. And I'm wondering if that might not be some movement to kind of do the opposite side of that for them this year. I'd expect a lot of these picks to not be there or to be traded back on. And then next year we have, but this is like a lot of value kind of in the middle rounds where you're still seeing, the curve dropping. It's not super flat yet, but altogether it's going to be good. So we're here at 173. I think we're just looking for sheer value. Jackson Slater's standing out to me, man. Like, let's see where he is. 134. So, that's interesting to me. That's really interesting to me. Let's see if we have a profile on it. It might be a little too far down. Yep, a little too far down. But really loving Jackson Slater there. So we go ahead and we get Kobe Bryant. We get LaQuint Allen. And then we add Jackson Slater. This is feeling like a really good draft. Like, this is feeling like a pretty quality draft. I'm liking the way this is going. These are some names that I really like going into the draft. Jonah Moynihan's also a Matt Stopsky favorite. He's played all over the place, and he was excellent at some positions, not super great at other positions. I'd consider that, but I like the player Jackson Slater, FCS player. Let's go ahead and get that. So, wow, more assets for the Bills. 177. And we have 206 as well. They're just like loaded up. Some of these picks will not be there, folks. So looking at some names, Shamar James is of interest. Jalen Travis. I really liked how Jalen Travis looked. I'm going to be honest. I've seen a lot of tape of him. He's an interesting player. Let's see where he is on the consensus big board. 144. So like we have a bunch of situations where we're adding people, a little after their EDP. He's really a name that's, and like, again, we're getting the guys here, and it's kind of all getting jumbled up. But let's go Jalen Travis. Let's add some more depth on the offensive line. I think that's going to be key moving forward. And this is turning out to be a really interesting draft, everybody, for them. Now we're getting really deep. And again, I think this is due to ESPN's ratings. We're getting into some tight ends that I'm noticing. Jalen Conyers, Luke Lachey. Willie Lampkin is an interesting one as well. Nas Stackhouse is another one that I think could be of interest. Bringing Stool also, Malachi Moore, Nick Nash at the wide receiver position. Ricky White, man, I love me some Ricky White. I think he's one of the best players in like, I think he's just going to be productive. That's my view. Like, I just think he's a good player. Let's see if we have a report on Nas Stackhouse, because he was a player that has a very interesting profile. 217. I thought he looked pretty good. He's been as high as the hundreds. Really, really interesting profile for him. Really hasn't been mocked for a while. Interesting profile. We've already gone wide receiver. Just looking for value here. 206. Interesting. Let's check out if any of these safeties or do if they're still in our top 100 as based on the consensus big board. No. Very interesting. This is going to be an interesting spot. Again, I don't think there's going to be a ton of picks here. So, we're really going far back here to get Ricky White. I guess we could probably get him at 255. Let's go NASDAQ. Let's look at a player like for Vernon, adding another Iowa State player. 295. Let's go with Stackhouse here. That's the name that's and just like keep loading up on that interior defensive line. I think that's really going to be the name of the game. Interior defensive line in the back half. I think is really going to be the key for this Bills draft. There went Ricky White. Very unfortunate. So that's the draft for us, folks. Here is the result of my 7-round mock draft for the Buffalo Bills. And that is Walter Nolan, Jaden Higgins, Jordan Birch, Quincy Riley, Demetrius Knight, Kobe Bryant, LaQuint Allen, Jackson Slater, Jalen Travis, and Nazir Stackhouse. I think we add some late value with a certified P5 guy, Nazir Stackhouse. I think some interior offensive line, swing offensive line depth, high potential guy in Jalen Travis. We kind of backstop the running back position, and I think the top picks really turned out to be well. We add Walter Nolan, a potential blue chip player that was massively productive at Ole Miss. We had Jaden Higgins, another big wide receiver. Mac Hollins outbound, maybe Jaden Higgins fills that in. Jordan Birch, a productive edge, and then 2 cornerbacks that I really liked in the All-Star games, Quincy Riley and Kobe Bryant. So an exciting draft altogether for the Buffalo Bills. Going to go ahead and share this to Twitter. And we shall continue on to our New York Jets. Thank you for hanging out. Feel free to jump in any of the comments. Would love to answer any questions. This is exciting, guys. So we'll start over, and our New York Jets. So the kind of view of the Jets, I think here is I'm not unconvinced they just have a good team. Like they just have good players, good interior offensive line. Olufushanu, the tackle, is going to be a guy that I think will continue to progress. They have Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, and then they have good players on the defense. Sauce Gardner, good linebacking core, and then cue ball, obviously. Quentin Williams at the interior. I think they're going to want some edge help. I think they're going to want some offensive line help, and I wouldn't be shocked if they end up making a move for a running back. What I'm really looking for here is what quarterback they can get, because I think if they can get Jalen Milroe, you're basically betting that perhaps you can get Jalen Milroe or Shador to a certain degree later on. I think they want an athletic quarterback. That if Justin Fields and if Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor currently being there is of any note, I think that's what they want. So let's go ahead and load up the draft. Let's get it popping. So So The smoke has been that Ashton Genty is interesting. Shador ends up going 2, which is interesting as well. I personally think that's going to happen. It may or may not get in my mock draft depending on what like really ends up happening. But let's address 7. So I just don't think they're going to go with Ashton Genty because I think Braylon Allen has been good. I think he's going to continue to progress. I think they want to see what they have with Brees Hall. And so the running back just doesn't make sense. Tight end does make sense to me. No longer have Tyler Conklin. But I think it's just going to be too hard to pass up on Armand Mimbu. So let's take a look at Armand Mimbu in our draft guide for the New York Jets. Armand Mimbu, just an excellently athletic player. We're looking at, pressures allowed green, not excellent. Like I prefer it to be blue, but he was playing in the SEC. But run blocking, man. Team rush yards before contact, 92nd percentile. Snaps on man blocking plays, like that's going to be something that's important at the next level. Tanner Ingstrad, obviously, they're going to be running a lot of diversity of plays, 2-point stance. I just think he's going to be a guy that is high upside. And Ingstrad has played with an immense athlete in Penei Sewell for several years. And if you're looking for a guy like that in the draft, it is Armand Mimbu. So we're going with Mimbu here. We're going with the tackle with the first pick for the Jets. Again, tight end, I feel like could be the other way this could go. But I think tackle, these people love offensive linemen. Like we're talking about Muji from the Broncos, who had an excellent offensive line and won through the offensive line. And we're talking about the Lions, where Tanner Ingstrad and Aaron Glenn came from, who also went through the offensive line. It feels like an offensive line. So, man, James Pierce Jr., a speed rusher, that feels like an interesting pick to me. That's really intriguing me. The quarterback, obviously Tyler Shuck. I can't pull the trigger here. And this is like totally me. James Pierce Jr. at 42. I don't know if I could pass up on that. Let's take a glance at James Pierce Jr. Like that is great value. Now there's a lot of questions out there, rumors out there that could confide this pick, but just sheer value 242, like you're taking a dart though at that point. So let's pull up James Pierce. 2 badges, fast start. He's getting off the ball. He's getting pressure within 2 seconds. He's also winning late. So that's awesome. Like he's really creating pressure on both sides of kind of the threshold that we have there. 22% pressure rate. This is a guy who was like a top pick at the beginning of the year and was productive, as you can see, and just didn't end up working out for one way or another. Aaron Glenn is a player coach. This is a guy who will develop players and has shown the ability to do so. I got to say, guys, Mimbu and James Pierce to start off, that is something for the Jets. That's a victory. So as it's running, let's look at their team needs consensus-wise. So we've addressed O-tackle. We have a needed edge. I think we're going to focus on shoring up that team, and I feel like the defensive backfield is going to be there. Again, quarterback is what I'm starting to think of in the 3rd and 4th round. Like that's really where I want to see some time. Man, cool. Just missed out. Like literally just missed out on Jalen Milroe. Oh, that's brutal. I'm now realizing my microphone's been messed up the whole time. Sorry, folks. I'm on the big mic now. Excellent. Just missed out on Kyle McCord and Jalen Milroe. Not ideal. Not ideal to say the least. Man. 2 picks away. All right. Breaks of the game. So we have a couple of edges here. We've addressed the tackle position. I think we could double down there as well. Get really young. Scadaboo's interesting here. This is a guy who I think that Lions team would really love. Like really, really love. And this is not really a need for them at all. Let's look at Scadaboo, man. I don't think it's a need for them, but I just think if you can add that guy at that position, it's really fun. It's just going to be fun for that team. And here's what I really love is the pass catching. Like that's the real difference. 40-yard dash, not ideal. But, like, this is just a guy who's an animal. Like, he's catching my eye here for the Jets. I want to know what Bruchhaus' contract situation is. Let's look it up. Let's look up Bruchhaus' contract situation. Have Braylon Allen behind him. So he was a second-round pick going into his final year. Man, I think I'm going to go Scatterboo here. Look, again, like, not a real need for them at all. Like, we're talking about third-round pick 73. Where's Scatterboo on the consensus big board? 80. Not ideal. Not ideal at all, folks. 80 on the other big board as well. Might be a little bit of a reach. Jordan Birch also available. Some edge talent. Let's look at Femi. Let's take a glance at Femi. I think he'll be an interesting player, and I think he'll pop up on these a little bit as well. Here's Femi. Okay. Not an excellent pressure rate. The UCLA team had a struggle last year. He is a little lighter, which I think fits their scheme a little bit more. Even though, that being said, like, we had Davenport and Hutchinson in that defense. So really kind of tough to say. Man, Scatterboo is just catching my eye. A little bit of a reach. Let's have some fun here, because I think this is a good narrative to have. I think the Jets actually may have running back a little higher up. I know there's been talks of, I'm going to use everybody. Add another guy to that room. Start some competition, especially given that Breece Hall is entering his contract year. I think it just makes sense to go with a guy like Scatterboo. And, man, does he fit in with that franchise? Like, with those guys adding Cam Scatterboo, it just feels right. So we have the Boo-to-Boo connection here. Armand Membu, Cam Scatterboo. Let's do it. It's fun. So we're moving on to pick 4, 110. Gunnar. So this is playing out kind of the way I wanted it to. We have Gunnar Helm. We have Harold Fannin Jr. We have quality tight ends. Harold Fannin Jr. These are guys who have some really interesting profiles. So I want to note first, Gunnar Helm played in basically an NFL system with Steve Sarkisian. So let's start off with him. Let's look at his profile. So he has a gloves and a yak. He was an excellent receiver over at Texas. Big guy, 6'5", 241. Had a pretty good target share for a tight end, 1.6 yards per route run. Pretty interesting air yard share. So he's getting most of his through the air. He's not really a yak guy. He is getting yak over expectation, which is key, but like only 56% is actually going to be, was running a full route tree, mostly getting a lot of targets as compared to other tight ends on screens and comebacks. So he would be usable in that kind of screen heavy action. That's really interesting. A lot of targets all over the field as comparative. Not a great athletic profile. I do like, and then Harold Fannin is just like a beast, dude. Interestingly, they're very similarly sized. That I didn't really expect. I may actually, shout out to Dane Brugler, I may actually consult the beast on this one, because I know these are going to be similar. Fannin is really more of a guy who you stretch out, and I'm trying to think of like Laporta. Like Laporta feels like he can also block in my head, just off the top of my head. Again, not a great athletic profile for him. Let's go ahead and pull up the beast guide. That's what I want to do, because I need, this is the way that I love to use our draft guide too, because you get a sense of the production of these guys. And when the eye meets the AI is when it's really key. So let's go ahead and pull up the beast. Let's look at some of these tight ends. And let's use it in tandem, because I think this is a really good way to use our draft guide. So let's look at his strengths and weaknesses. Straight line explosiveness, eye meeting the AI, run after catch. This is really interesting to me, was a key ingredient to his success. And sure enough, he has that yak badge. That's really interesting to know. That's the eye meeting the AI right there, folks. He's getting yards after expectation. Run after catch was key.
What's his downsides? You try to look for what the guys can do, not what they can't do. Inconsistent. So the blocking is alarming, especially for a team that's probably going to run the ball quite a bit, especially now that we have Cam Scattaboo. So I'm eating the AI there. The blocking is the stuff that we need here. That's the extra element. Gunnar Helm. Let's take a glance. Third, fourth round grade makes sense because we are in the fourth round. Below average speed. Yep, that popped up. I'm eating AI in terms of our Sumer athletic scores. Not a mover in the run game. Yeah, this is interesting. They have a very similar profile here. Head ducker into content. So just a lot of questions in the blocking game. Ooh, man. This is a tough decision. Very tough decision. Tight end, massive need. We're getting them at cost to a certain degree. We might have to do any money here. Let's consult the consensus big board here. Fannin 86 and Helm 101. Okay. Let's go with the consensus. Let's go with Harold Fannin here. Bang. So we add Scattaboo and Fannin. We're adding just production. We're adding production and guys who have succeeded, which, makes sense to a certain degree. And these are also feel like pretty good culture picks as well, which is definitely going to be big for this franchise. So at this point, it feels like we should probably start looking at DBs and other positions. Kobe Bryant available. I'm really looking at Billy Bowman here. That caught my eye. Let's look at. Oh, we don't have Bill in here, so we're starting to get deep in the draft here. Wide receiver could be interesting as well. Interior line help. It's interesting here because I think interior line help could be interesting, but I think the Jets feel like they can probably address that in free agency to a certain degree. Jackson Slater again pops up. Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia. Here is a guy who I love. And, I don't think we've gone interior yet. CJ West, 149. Let's see where he is on the consensus where it includes CJ West, 107. So we are getting a little bit of value here. Let's look at CJ West on the Sumer draft guide, an excellently productive player that I know a lot of people really like. So we're dealing with 6'1", 316. According to our boy Shawnee Schemes, West is a good combination of strength, quickness, balance, natural football. Man, this feels like a pick for them. Great pressure rate, blue chip there. A and B gap. So he's able to rush from the 1 and the 3. Good against quality opponents. Excellent in the run. This feels like our pick. This feels like so we're going to go with CJ West, an excellently productive player from a quality Indiana team in the Big Ten, was able to really create pressure and have an excellent tackle for loss rate amongst defensive tackles. I like this pick. We're getting him at cost too. We're getting him at a quality cost, 107 on the big board. So we're in the 5th round now. Billy Bowman's still there. Some of those guys that are Jackson Hall's at the tight end position. Interesting. Ooh, Rashard Smith, another interesting kind of running back, tailback. I'm kind of regretting the Scattaboo pick now. And this is going to be really interesting. And, I'm going to make a note of this really. Here's why I'm regretting the Scattaboo pick, because I'm starting to look at these guys like Trevor Etienne and Brashard Smith. And these are guys who also have the same kind of profiles as Scattaboo. They just weren't as productive. Brashard Smith obviously is a guy who has now become kind of a running back, was a wide receiver at Miami, immensely productive. Very interesting. I'm really regretting that pick. So here's a note. it feels like you're going to be able to get quality running back value in this draft late. And so be hesitant of the guys who are picking running backs really early, except maybe if it's Ashton Genty, if you truly believe he's better. But I'm going to say this, like, wait until the 5th and 6th rounds to pick a running back. I think that's really the takeaway from this exercise, because you can get some really, really good running backs pretty late. And I think that's going to, really work out well for some teams. So let's take a look at their team needs. D-line, quarterback. Is there a quarterback in they've really got snapped up. It's really quite interesting. And none of these guys, Riley Leonard could hit the spot. I feel like he is definitely expected to go. We're talking about guys that are, so we're pick 180, pick 162. Can we wait? 186. Okay, I think we can wait. So if Riley Leonard is available at 186, I'm taking him. And he fits in well with kind of the concept of what we're trying to do here, in my opinion. We're not going to make a trade. No trades. This one's tough. This is one that I would consider trading back for. We have somehow, there we go. Don't really need we could add a wide receiver, I guess. Let's see if there's any wide receivers on our draft guide that we really love that might still be available. Buka, Luther Burden, Jalen Royals, Tess Johnson, all these guys are here. Ricky White. God, man, Ricky White also feels that special teams ability. Let's make the pick. Let's look at some wide receivers. Ricky White, 255. I think some of these ESPN ones are way off. 241. Wow. That is crazy. That is crazy, guys. Oh my God. What happened? Is it just because of his 40? Let's look at Ricky White's profile. This is shocking. 6'1", 184, an All-American basically 2 years in a row. We're talking about a special teams demon. He got the gloves and the route technician. He was immensely productive, according to our Sumer scores, powered by AI. Also was running great routes, excellently high team target share, excellent yards per route run. Wasn't really getting pressed a ton. A smattering of different routes he ran, targeted all over the field. Man, it just must be that 4.61. I'm wondering if this is just over-indexing. God. So it seems like we can get him later. This is a tough spot. You can never go wrong with O-line depth, I think. And so let's talk about Jonah Moynihan. This is a guy who's been kind of all over the place. I think we do have a profile on him. I think he's one of our guys that we slotted in that weren't necessarily big board guys. Seth McLaughlin is also there. Maybe we didn't get him in. So, okay, let's look at Seth McLaughlin, given we have a profile on him, because I believe he is available. Yep, there he is, center guard. So we're going to add a little bit of interior O-line. Not necessarily a need, but can never have too much depth there. 6'4", 204. Older guy, according to Shawnee schemes. Tough center that wants to compete. He has range on zone runs. Will look to increase his play power at the next level. Obviously, the center 100%. Pressure allowed, okay. Oh man, when team sees a blitz or a stunt, not loving that. Was part of an offensive line that had a bunch of good guys, clearing out yardage for Travion Henderson. Big school guy. I like his profile. We have a profile on him. I'm going to go ahead and take Seth McLaughlin. Reason I'm taking this pick for the Jets, I think once they're going to start getting to pick rounds 5, 6, there's going to be places that they probably want to hit: the wide receiver position, the quarterback position, but you can never add too much interior line depth. That's what we're doing here. Please have our boy. Ooh, okay. So I'm like really unclear of why Riley Leonard is this far down. Like let's consult Dane here. Like I just like don't have a good sense of what is happening here. So Dane doesn't have him in his top 100, but he does have him as a top 10 QB. I think this just like fits what we want to do. And if you recall, like Leonard was considered to be like a first rounder at points. He wasn't great, but he's just a winner. You know, maybe I'm biased here. I don't think I am. I do love a guy who can run a nice, but like if he's your quarterback 3, I think you can go in with like I think you can win games with a quarterback stable of Tyrod Taylor, Justin Fields, and like this just feels right. Let's see if we can get a sense. Oh, come on, Athletic. Oh, whoopsies. I'm assuming he's not in the top 100. Yeah, certainly not. Let's check out Grinding the Mocks, who I will be having on the Draft FM podcast. Shout out to Ben Robinson, Grinding the Mocks. Let's see if we can get a sense of Riley Leonard. No, we can't. Okay. So I'm going to like go off the ESPN beaten path here, and I'm going to select Riley Leonard, who, you know, is on the big board, not featured in a ton of mock drafts since last year. Overall rank of 180th. I just think it makes sense, man. I just think it makes sense. Crazy pick, guys, but I'm doing it. Taking Riley Leonard early. And I want Ricky White. So I'm going to take him too. I like this draft. I'm actually liking how this turns out. This is very interesting to me for the Jets because it seems as if they're going to hit every position of need except quarterback to a certain degree, with top players in my mind. So let's review the Jets drafts. I think this is knocking it out of the park. Like I think this is, as far as process goes, like you're getting guys that are not going to be available at the next pick to a certain degree. I'm really regretting this Cam Scatterboo pick. But I think it makes sense given the guys, but I'm really regretting it. So let's roll through. Armand Mimbu, I'm giving that a good grade. We get a tackle that people like. We get a tackle that's highly rated according to consensus. Like, congratulations to us. 242, James Pierce Jr. I'm assuming the fact that he dropped is like crazy. Perhaps it'll happen. But like, if we're just looking at adding talent, adding James Pierce Jr. is adding immense talent to go alongside Will McDonald. Like, we're going to have 2 of the better speed rushers in the nation. Regretting this pick. I'm giving myself a bad grade on this pick. I got a little excited. And so like, I'm like going to go ahead and tweet regretting my Cam Scatterboo pick at 373 for the Jets. And here's why I'm regretting it. What I'm finding now is like we can go in the 5th and 6th rounds and still get like running backs who feasibly distributionally could be similar to Cam Scatterboo at the next level, who have better athletic profiles. And again, athletic profiles, fancy schmancy, whatever. We can find that and we can get better value here. I got a little excited. I picked Cam Scatterboo because I think he's just so productive. I think it makes sense given the Lions team. But I think this was a good pick. We had Gunnar Helm and we had Harold Fannin available, and then we got him. I like CJ West. This is a guy that our Sumer scores love. I like that pick. Seth McLaughlin. We add just some interior depth, and then 2 of my picks, Riley Leonard and Ricky White. I think this is an interesting draft. I think the real mess up here was going Cam Scatterboo here and not going with another player and kind of getting caught up in the shiny name. and not going with a running back in round 5. Like, if I have any advice for the Jets going through this exercise, it is to not select a running back early and wait until the 5th or 6th round and then go with the running back, because I think they're going to be able to get some great value guys like Bruchhaus Smith, guys like Trevor Etienne, that are hard runners that can contribute in the passing game. So let's share this to the Twitter and keep it moving, guys. So 2 of 2. We have done now full 7 rounds of the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. And now we move on to the Minnesota Vikings. And this is going to be the shortest, obviously. They don't have a ton of picks. And they do have like distinct needs, but like kind of not. They really tried to address everything in free agency. I think that was their plan. And they're going to have a, what'll be interesting to me is if they go with a late round quarterback, but maybe that's not that interesting, So let's figure it out here. I think they could do a lot of different things here. I think they're fine at the edge position. Like, you never can have too many edges. I think the safety position is one that is interesting for them. There's so many good defensive players, man, just at this spot. Like, there is a real glut of quality defensive players in the middle of the draft. And so I'm wondering if those teams like sitting around like 12 to 15 don't think to themselves, hey, I'm wondering if I need to call the Steelers if they really want to go up and get Shedeur Sanders and figure out if I can't just drop back and like hope a guy falls to me, because it probably is going to work out. I think Nick Emenwari makes sense here to a certain degree, like that big safety that can really, wreck shop. I'm trying to remember. This isn't good for me, but I'm trying to remember if I had him going there in my mock draft. I'm gonna figure that out shortly. I had them going Malachi Starks, who I'm assuming is off the board, right? No. Huh. Why is Emenwari above? Very interesting. I think Malachi Starks is like a great fit here. 39. What? That doesn't feel right. Let's get off of Riley Leonard. Yeah, dude, 21. Like, this is right in the money zone, it feels like. Let's look at 28 here. This feels like money zone to me. Let's take a look at our profile for these 2 players to compare, because I think safety is a good move here. I think the defensive backfield is where they're going to want to build. You're not getting a ton of value here, but I don't know if I love any of the cornerbacks available, which I think is also a position of need. Yeah, I think you can wait on some of these guys. Savon Ravel would be of interest, but I think like the cornerbacks really have to do a lot of work. I think Ben Morrison would be a really interesting piece for them. So let's compare Malachi Starks and Nick Emenwari. I think that's the questions we're asking ourselves here. So Malachi Starks, a tracker, our scouts really love him. Starks is a versatile safety with strong instincts and anticipation and coverage. He's also a willing run defender, which I think is going to be key as he closes space in the alley. Blue missed tackle grade. A lot of positional versatility, which I think really matters. 91st percentile. Wow. Played, a lot of cover 2. I'm liking this, man. I think this is an interesting profile, and I think he really could make an effect on in that defense. Nick Emenwari, just a big dog, man. Coverage badge, that's key. 93rd percentile. Didn't they lose Metellus? Like, I'm wondering if he could play that Metellus role. Nope, he was given an extension. Okay, so I think that he'd have to be more in that Metellus role. I gotta agree up on the Vikings, man. Let's take a glance at the Vikings. Mekhi Blackman, Byron Murphy, Isaiah Rodgers. Yeah, I think we can wait. Yeah, they're going to need someone to fill in that Cam Bynum role. I think, they add Theo Jackson. I think it really makes sense here. And I think that's probably what the agreement is safety and cornerback. I think Malachi Starks just feels right here. In a way that, like, I think that Metellus role, 2-year extension, he's going to be playing the role that I think Nick Emenwari would play. And so let's go with Malachi Starks. Sticking with my mock draft. So again, we're going Malachi Starks here because he's a player that was productive at Georgia, has positional versatility, and I think he's just going to be an excellent player moving from a Georgia defense into a Brian Flores defense. And I think the mix of those two project out well. So we're going all the way to round 3, pick 97. And I think we can go swing O-line here. Oh man, Josiah Stewart. Oh, that would be interesting. Let's look at their what just happened? Let's look at their depth chart again. So we got Greenard, Van Gink and Dallas Turner. Man, it's just a good defense. Like, it's hard to draft for some of these teams because it's like, where do you really want to invest? I think, they're going to want to invest at depth here because this killed them last year. And so, I think depth at the tackle, at the swing positions will be key. I've also heard mumblings that they may be looking at wide receiver as well. It feels like interior defensive line to a certain degree was addressed in free agency. Is there any cornerbacks that are of interest? Is another question that I have. I think they're probably snapped up by now. Yeah. May look at Kobe Bryant. He feels like a Brian Flores guy. Denzel Burke is a guy who didn't had a bad year, but was excellent the year before. As much as I like Josiah Stewart here, and I think he would be a good fit, I just feel like the swing O-line positions. Yeah, so we're really reaching on some of these swing O-line, man. Really reaching on some of the tackles too. Let's consult the big board. Who is around the 97th? Ozzie Trapillo is there. Okay. Well, let's take a glance at Ozzie Trapillo. He's a tackle. Again, a lot of these guys are just swing guys. Charles Grant, Jared Wilson, Tate Ratledge. Let's see if Tate Ratledge is available because I like that. I like Tate Ratledge. So Tate Ratledge is gone. Emory Jones is gone. Belton's gone. We're in an interesting position here where a lot of these gentlemen have been snapped up. Ozzie Trapillo. Okay. Let's take a glance at if we have a profile on him. Here we go. Ozzie Trapillo. Okay, awesome. Good to know. So he's a 2-badge guy. So we really like him. A little older, 6'8", 316. This is going to be a depth move. it feels like it's going to be difficult to get that size inside, but we've seen it done before. He seems like a true tackle. I'm not loving that pressure's allowed. Not loving this either. He's a run blocker. I'm interested in like what Dane says about him. I'm interested in the scouting side. And again, guys, like this is an excellent way to use the draft guide, in my opinion. Like mix the eye with the AI. Towering blocker with swing tackle traits. Again, like they struck like Brian O'Neill. Don't get me wrong, like Brian O'Neill and Darrisaw are both like Pro Bowl performers, but when those guys went down last year, they like really, really struggled. And I think you want the depth. So let's look at his weaknesses. Flat back, inconsistent, dropping hips. He's 6'8". No question there. Knee injuries. Tall with functional length. I just think they like need depth. I think depth is key on that O-line. Let's do it. Let's take a shot. I think tackle is probably not going to be somewhere they go, but it just feels like they need depth on the offensive line, just generally. Like I just don't know if you can go with some of these guys long term. So we get into the 5th round. We are now at pick 139. I really love this Jordan Mason pickup that they did. I think like he's really going to be a contributor for them. I think he was pretty good last year. I loved when he played. At points, I thought like he really should have split reps with McCaffrey when McCaffrey was playing. I also think wide receiver's interesting thing here. I think we actually may like double down here on like Kobe Bryant. I think we can keep loading up on interior line. Xavier Restrepo is of interest. Yeah, Tez and Restrepo are interesting to me. I think at 139, Kobe Bryant is like maybe the move. Like talk about aggression. Like this is a guy. Dang, we can't win for losing here. All right. Well, apparently Kobe Bryant is no longer on here. A lot of like, there's just a lot of different depth ways that they might have to go. And we really haven't delved into cornerback yet. Are there D linemen available? That's a good question. And here's what I was saying with Scatterboo earlier. Like, you're going to be able to get good running backs like late in the 5th round, which is kind of crazy. Jordan Phillips is a dude who's interesting. Let's see if we have a profile on him. I think that could be an interesting move. That name caught my eye. So not a badge player. Wasn't in the top 25 of any of our badges. Not a pressure guy, but a big guy. And just like not loving what I'm seeing here, frankly. Pegues. I love Pegues. What a player. Tonka Hemingway, Ty Robinson, also good players. Man, it's really going to be tough to see what they do. I wonder if this isn't a trade back year and like load up for future years for them, because I do think they could get away with that, and I think it would be interesting to see how it plays out for them. Let's look at Ty Hamilton because we have a profile on him. Also, a guy who is not badged up, not a great pressure rate. Not really loving what I'm seeing here. So I think like let's go with the dog. Let's go with Kobe Bryant here. Is there a reason Kobe Bryant like isn't in here? Like what's his consensus big board? Yeah, 128. That feels like good value. And it seems like they need a player like that. So now we're going way down, pick 6. It just feels like this is going to be trade down city for them. So they can either add value or, you know, so it feels like for the Minnesota Vikings, this is going to be like, let's reload the coffers with the 5 picks that we have, because they really, really went hard in free agency. Let's ride with some of the free agents. Let's get value, guys that fall to us, get value on places that are interesting, and then trade back and trade back and trade back and trade back, particularly if they want to add like a running back or something like that, or some of these positions that are pretty hefty at the center or guard position. So we're still sitting here, man. Like it's just like tough pickings for them, frankly. I just they can continue. It just feels like that should be the play here, to continue trading back. I do love Jared Harrison Hunt, man. He's a really interesting player that I think it fits really well into their scheme too. There's not really any names that are catching my eye per se. Harrison Hunt's just a very interesting player that I like a lot. And I just think that like the mix of size and speed and the production really plays out well for them. Q Robinson. Like, let's see who we have on the board. So we haven't really gone D tackle yet. And I think that's like, I think this is the place probably to do it. Like, I think there actually is like guys that can help you at this point. And I really like Jared Harrison Hunt. I want to highlight him. Let's see where he is, like how far out of so 296. Like we're talking about undraftable range there. 187. We're drafting 100 spots. Not loving that. Not loving that at all. But I did like him. Who is around pick 187 in the consensus pick board? Tyler Batty, Jay Higgins. So, it's interesting. I liked Harrison Hunt better than Tyler Batty when I watched them, and I think he grades out a little bit better. Clay Webb. This is interesting. Tommy Hill. Interesting, and all interesting data points. There's Tommy Hill. Let's do it. This is fun. We're just going to do it. We're going to take a shot. He's like way down the board. They can probably pick him up as an undrafted free agent, but who knows? So we'll draft him. And I think that might be it. Maybe we have one more pick in the 7th round. Yep. We do. And I think this has to be, oh, nope, that's it. So the wrap up for the Vikings is we get Malachi Starks at a position of need. I think they'll have their pick of Malachi Starks and of Nick Emenwari at the safety position, or if they want to go cornerback, I think they'll have some cornerbacks to choose from, whether that's Savon Ravel, whether that is guys like Ben Morrison. Like they'll be able to make that selection at 24. I don't know if they can actually wait. Feels like trade back city. Round 3, pick 97, we go Ozzie Trapillo, the big tackle. This is really a depth move going at round 3. I know like at that point, you're starting to kind of ask questions of if it should be depth, but it is what it is. Round 5, Kobe Bryant, a scrappy cornerback, and then we take a shot. Round 6, Jared Harrison Hunt, the defensive tackle. I think all of these guys are players that they could probably be had later, and as a result, my takeaway from this mock draft for the Minnesota Vikings is expect trade backs. I just think the mechanics of the draft lend itself to them restocking, particularly in the middle rounds or middle rounds in the future, and taking safeties, cornerbacks, and interior offensive linemen, interior defensive linemen who will be available later. And like, I don't know if any of these players are really going to move the needle except for perhaps Malachi Starks here. And so if that's your belief as a team, trade back, see if you can get value in the future and continue stockpiling picks for a team that did not have a lot of assets this year. So that is my live stream. We've gone an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll work on cutting up some of these clips for y'all to get a sense of these players and why we picked them. But thank you for watching. Signing off from Sumer Sports, I am Sam Bruchhaus.